All right, hello everyone. Welcome in, welcome in. It's great to be here, going live again today, and just wanted to take an opportunity to expand on these conversations that we've been having around burnout, resilience, and thriving at work. So over the last month, or not the last month, but over the last week and the coming weeks, I'm going to be breaking down the hero mask and what that can look like in our leadership when we're talking about burnout, because this topic is so multifaceted and it can show up in so many different ways, and it's important that we be able to talk about it. So for any of you who are joining live, hello, thank you for being here. And if you have questions, if you have thoughts, throw them in the chat. That's what we're here for. Otherwise, just continue to keep an open mind and let's dig into some of the ways that burnout, particularly through this mindset of the hero mask, who is highly perfectionistic and shies away from collaboration and trust building with others. Let's talk about how that might show up and why it shows up. So last week, we talked a little bit about the burnout loop, which is really like the symptoms of burnout that you might be familiar with and that you might notice and not even really name as burnout. So that can be things, again, like having brain fog, struggling to make decisions, not really being able to remember in your short-term memory that easily because you're so stressed and overwhelmed. And that can then drip into exhaustion, struggling to get out of bed on the weekends to do things that you love and to spend time with people that you love. In more extreme cases, it can look like physical illness, getting the flu or the cold multiple times over a couple of months and knowing that that's your body's way of communicating that it needs deep rest. And then into more emotional places like pure disconnect and just a lack of care and compassion for your work anymore, really just not feeling motivated or bothered. And ultimately, the last step in this downward spiral, I will call it, is really the impact that it has on your team. And this is what most of us are familiar with when we think about toxic workplaces or situations where things are just not clearly working and it becomes obvious to us. And that can look like team conflict, lack of collaboration, highly competitive team members who are undermining each other. Things like this are all elements of burnout. But again, today we want to ask the question, why? Why do these patterns present themselves? And this is where it's important for us to now think about the timeline loop, right? Because burnout is not just about symptoms that we're noticing today. We need to also have a conversation about how your mindset and your belief system since childhood has been slowly layering on brick by brick a mentality and a mindset around how you have to show up to be seen, accepted, successful, and recognized in the professional space. So this week, I dropped a carousel that was talking about how burnout and belief systems have shown up from childhood up until where many of us find ourselves now at career growth, career leadership stages. And I just want to gently walk through that so that folks have an opportunity to more deeply understand how and why and where these belief systems show up and follow us along, especially from the perspective of the hero in today's situation. So if we start from childhood, right? Childhood is the point in life when most of us are at our most innocent, at our most pure, and at our most open. And when we are connecting with our families, our parents, this is where a scientific perspective around epigenetics comes in. And for those who don't know, epigenetics is a scientific understanding that we don't just carry the biology of our parents when we're born, but we also carry their trauma. And anything that they've had to survive through, right? Anything in the environment that shaped who they were is something that passes through into our bloodline when we are born. So for example, my mother gave birth to my brother in West Africa. However, she gave birth to me in North America. So you could even argue that different environment, different food, different stressors at that time gave her two completely different experiences during her pregnancy, and potentially, exponentially had an impact on the types of people that my brother and I would have become. And this has been scientifically proven, and it's important for us to remember that at the moment we even get here, at the moment we even land, we are carrying so much ancestral and familial lineage into how we've had to survive, how we've learned to survive, and how we've learned to stay safe. So if you combine this sort of scientific, biological nature aspect, things that are beyond your control, that are just a part of you based on when you got here, and then you link that with whatever particular way your family and your culture nurtured you, it's very clear to see that if as a child there was a sentiment and a mentality in your family that we have to work really hard, we can only depend on each other, don't trust other people, never share what the family is doing outside of the family, those sentiments, those ideas, those beliefs, those repeated statements, they stick with you. And for most of us, before the age of 8 or 9 as children, our belief system is ingrained. So every time you yell at a small child and you think, he'll be fine, he won't remember that when he's 20, those ideas and those dynamics are being deeply ingrained. So let's start there, that for many people who are wearing the hero mask today, it started with this understanding of where their family came from a place of nature and a place of nurture. And that deeply affects what your soul and even your spirit understands is going to be required of you to walk through this world. So next, we can take it up a level and think about your adolescent years as a teenager growing up, right? These are the times when you're actually forming your deepest roots. And for many of us, that sense of belonging and safety in society comes from our friends. It comes from our peers. And so if at that age and at that stage, you were getting a lot of messages and feedback that you had to do things alone, or things would not move forward without your involvement and your control, even amongst your friend groups, if you were always the leader of your group of friends, that mentality and that attitude stays with you and it carries forward into your young adulthood. Now we come into young adulthood, where most people are transitioning from, most millennials, I'll say, we're definitely transitioning out of university education into full-time work. Many of us are navigating leaving home for the first time and becoming independent. And there are a lot of emotions wrapped up in that. However, in joining the workforce, the message that most of us are sent is that when you become professional, there's no space for your emotions. Nobody cares if you left home for the first time last week and you start your new job tomorrow. You need to suck it up, you need to figure it out, you need to pull it together, and you need to be ready to compete based on your technical ability, and there's not a lot of room for your emotions. And think about how many people steer towards careers that make sense on paper and are not necessarily a good fit for what they care about, what they're impassioned by, and what they're emboldened by. Think about even yourself, and when you were facing up to career decisions you wanted to make, to what extent you allowed your emotions to feed into the direction you took. And it's not to say that every decision that's made should be an emotional one, but it's a question of whether there was space for your emotions at the table, or whether what you were taught and what you told yourself was, you know what, emotions, I'm going to put you to the side right now to focus on more practical, logical, technical matters, right? So now we're in young adulthood, we're in early 20s, you keep going with that mindset, and then we come to the career growth stage. which is where you're excelling. You've maybe had a couple of promotions here and there. You might have even moved around to a couple of different workplaces. You are establishing who you are professionally. And for many of us, we are doing that purely from a place of mental and strategic control. And this career development phase, or career growth phase, I should say, is one that is really born of an idea of, if I have the plan, if I do everything right, if my ideas become executed to a place of perfection, I am going to do well and I'm going to be successful. And for those who wear the hero mask, this is where that deep sense of control and that sense of over responsibility, taking on workloads, not sharing responsibility and duty with others because you're not sure that they will do it exactly the way that you want, in exactly the way that you need, in exactly the way that makes you feel safe. This is where those tendencies start to come up, right? And so this is why it's so important to be mindful of how this timeline loop can actually affect where we stand today. None of us woke up and we're just like, oh, I feel terrible in my body, I'm stressed all the time, I'm tired. There has been deep messaging in our subconscious, whether it's from our family, whether it's from your group of friends who are all CEO, founders, boss babes, whatever the case may be, whether it be that a lot of peers in your family group are also on this tilt and on this lean of being people who are advancing career and are putting other matters to the side to advance and be successful. It's important for us to understand and appreciate where that comes from. But now the question is, where do you want to go from here as you grow as a leader? Right? That's really key. And as we elevate a level in terms of moving beyond just using the mind to control and support us to be successful, there comes a question of our nervous systems and how well our nervous systems are set up to support us when it comes to higher level leadership. Because higher level leadership really requires that we be ready to respond to things that we didn't plan for, that we be capable of acting in a crisis, that we are able to work with different kinds of people. And if you have been using mental control, emotional suppression, peer pressure of wanting to be one of the cool kids, and listening to what your parents or your family's belief system was, there's a good chance that you are going to struggle when it comes time to really step into full leadership and own that in a way that allows you to be well, that allows your team, your organization, and your broader mission to thrive, because you will be held back by some of these beliefs that we have just spoken about. And so many of you might hear terms like nervous system regulation. That's really big right now in the coaching world. And I want people to understand what that actually means. So part of why your nervous system is dysregulated and feels uncomfortable is everything we just talked about. Using the mind and planning and strategy as a formal means of controlling your environment and your situations, suppressing your emotions and not giving them room to communicate to you around what your needs are, having this overwhelming need to get along with people or to not have people impact you even, right? And having these kind of relational dynamics impact how you actually show up. All of these habits that are decades in the making are part of what contributes to nervous system deregulation, right? It's what makes it difficult to respond in a crisis, because your nervous system is spending so much time and energy trying to think the right things, trying to not feel, trying to do what's going to make other people happy, and trying to be the person that will make your family members proud, whatever that means, that there isn't really a lot of space to be present and to respond thoughtfully, creatively, outside of the box when life happens, because life will surely happen. So take a moment to reflect on whether you find yourself wearing the hero mask, whether you're at a point where this old timeline and narrative of I have to do things alone, I can't rely on others, I need to push down everything I'm feeling, is now colliding with what you're experiencing in terms of discomfort and burnout and how that's showing up in your organization. Because really what we need to talk about is how to shift that timeline so that you can move above and beyond the way burnout presents itself, and that you can really embody resilience. So let's talk about what that means for a moment. In the work that I do, I lead with this idea called the bridge framework. And the B in bridge stands for beliefs, because our subconscious beliefs, these ideas that we don't really even have awareness of, that are limiting us or that are pushing us beyond what might be healthy, are really driving the show in the background. And it's so important for us to go on this journey of understanding how to tap into our beliefs, understand them, unlearn them, and cement new beliefs so that we can overcome burnout and we can be better leaders who are able to generate impact and do that in a way that's sustainable, right? Because doing a meditation here and there, that's great. Taking walks in nature, that's fine. These are all great practices, but these practices without an appreciation for the timeline that's gotten you here is not really going to help you shift and change in the long term, which is exactly what we're all about and exactly what we're here for and the focus of the work that we do together. So please take that into consideration when you're thinking about what impacts your burnout, not just the things that are happening today, but how and why you respond to the things that are happening today and how that keeps you stuck in a sense. So if we're to bring it back to timelines and thinking about family and thinking about where we really came from, there are a lot of these ideas around ancestral lineage, right? And if we're going to talk about ancestry and what has fed into us coming to this point, cosmology is a really interesting concept to tap into. And so in astrology, there is this concept that at the exact time of your birth, in the exact location of your birth, you have a very unique blueprint. And elements of this blueprint are able to help you understand yourself in a better way, understand your strengths, and understand some of your weaknesses. And so there's an element of this blueprint called the South Node. And the South Node is really here to communicate to us what lessons and what habits and traits we came here to transform and move above. So again, if we're talking about the timeline loop meeting the burnout loop, what is it that's showing up in your timeline loop and your burnout that you're actually here to learn and overcome so that you can be your healthiest, happiest, most vibrant self who doesn't feel drained all the time? And so for those who have any understanding of the South Node and the hero mask represents a leadership style that is very aligned to the element of fire in nature. And if we think about fire, what are the benefits of fire? It warms, it soothes us, it provides light, it's vibrant, and that is very much what people who are wearing the hero mask, that is very much the light side of what they are able to bring to their work and their leadership. And that's beautiful. We need that. We need people who are visionary. We need people who are passionate. However, the destructive, chaotic side of fire is that it can destroy, and it can destroy very quickly and rapidly if it is not kept in check and if it is not clear about what types of boundaries are helpful, right? You don't want a campfire to destroy an entire campground, home, and community. And that's also a mindset and mentality that leaders who are operating from a hero mask need to recognize within themselves so that they can take the steps to actually heal this, move beyond it, and step above the lessons that they came to learn in this time, in their leadership, again, to further their impact and further their mission and not be stunted by the brain fog, the exhaustion, the physical illness, the lack of passion entirely, and the dysfunction with their teams, which gets in the way, right? So for anyone who is finding that this resonates and is wanting to delve deeper into their mask and understand how childhood timelines might be impacting how they show up as a leader today, something that we offer and that I would be so happy for you to connect with and get involved in is our free mini course called Master Your Burnout Mask for More Resilient Leadership. And this course is maybe 60 to 90 minutes tops, but it will help you actually to recognize where and how you're showing up and to start to strengthen your muscle around building awareness, around certain habits that might be keeping you stuck in your leadership and keeping you from really leaning into more trust, having more recognition around how hard you actually are working, and enable you to loosen up some of that control in a healthy way. Because honestly, when our nervous systems are operating from a place that is healthy and balanced, we are open to collaboration, right? We are willing to change our habits and the way that we do things. And we are much more accepting of what is happening in the external. And that gives us the space to be creative, to be innovative, and to pivot more. So if that's something that you think would be interesting, I encourage you to check out the link in bio and click through into that free mini course. I will see you there. Thank you so much for watching. And if you have any questions about how timelines and belief systems have perhaps impacted your leadership, feel free to leave them in the chat now during the live or in the recorded version that will be available, and we can talk about it, because it's really important to appreciate that it's been a pattern of behavior and a pattern of beliefs and a pattern of survival that has brought us to this point of showing up the way that we do, and that these are things we can work on once our awareness is in place. So for those who joined, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for listening. And I hope to connect with you soon. Have a great day. Take care of yourself.